Hey folks, so my voice isn't completely back yet, but I couldn't hold off on making this video any longer because we're totally playing with the HTC One Mini and I had to share my first impressions with you guys. Though there is a part of me that kind of wishes I could tap into this voice whenever I wanted to because it's got kind of a cool guy edge to it. And you know me, I love doing unboxings. So let's totally look inside what might be inside this box, and how much do I not care? Because we want to talk about the phone. Actually, for once, I will talk about the unboxing experience just because it comes in this slip cover with the texting and driving it can wait logo right on the front of this little plastic slip guard. Now, first off, that is a fantastic campaign. Definitely go check out itcanwait.com. And if you haven't seen it yet, check out From 1 Second to the Next, directed by Werner Herzog. It's an amazing look into four families' lives who have been affected by people who have been texting while driving. We also posted a Q&A after the LA premiere of Werner Herzog's documentary, so I would highly recommend you go check that out. But the bummer about this slipcase is the phone slides out of it super easily. So you're totally denied that experience of peeling off a screen guard, which is one of my favorite things about unboxing a phone. But enough about me being a goober. The HTC One Mini is a glorious, gorgeous little piece of tech. So just taking a quick tour around the phone, at the top we've got our headphone jack with a slightly better finished plastic edge. I still don't like where the power button is on HTC phones. For whatever reason, I want them to be on the right side of the screen, not on the left side of the screen. But at least this phone is small enough where that dance of sliding up to hit the power button isn't quite as egregious as it is on the HTC One, where you really feel sometimes like you might drop it if you're not careful in just how you turn your phone on. And instead of the one-piece volume rocker, we have two separate volume buttons. And actually, I kind of like the feel of this a little bit better than the solid one piece, just because there's a definite separation in between volume up and volume down. And for those little moments, I'm trying to control the volume on my phone just with my thumb when I'm walking around. It's those little tactile sensations that really feed me better information on how I'm using my smartphone out in the wild. Unfortunately, as you can see, there is no IR blaster on the One Mini. I was really hoping there would be. It seems that's going to be one of those features that stays at the premier end of our handsets, but I hope that filters down soon because the number of cool things I've been able to do with that IR blaster, even just on the few phones that have it, has been pretty wicked cool. Especially, using it as a remote shutter for the camera that I'm shooting this on right now, or as a remote control for my TV cable box DVR setup is awesome because I'm always losing the remotes anyway, but I always have my phone on me. Unfortunately, no go on the HTC One Mini. On the back of the phone, we've got the ultra pixel camera, the LED flash, another microphone here, which I'm assuming is part of the stereo microphone setup for recording video and audio. I wonder if they've sorted out their lawsuits with Nokia in regards to the microphone tech. I hope they have, because it would be a bummer if HTC got shut down for that. On the bottom of the phone, we've got our micro USB port and the other microphones so that we can, take calls and do that kind of stuff. On the front, we've got our fantastic boom sound speakers. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. And we've got this two-button layout that I'm still not, for as much as I like HTC's current design philosophy and where they're taking their phones, the direction that HTC's headed, I still don't love having a home button and a back button, especially for all of the things that your home button does. So home button takes you home, and then double tapping it takes you to your recently used programs, and then long pressing it takes you to Google Now. It's a little cumbersome to be fitting that much functionality onto one capacitive button. And that also means that we're occasionally seeing that pop-up menu bar with the three dots for those apps that aren't properly coded to include a menu option somewhere in the design UI. Now, thankfully, people are updating their apps, so it's becoming rarer that you'll see that pop up, but every now and then it does rear its ugly head, and it's just kind of a design bummer. Talking about the screen, so this 4.3-inch diagonal display, I thought it would be difficult to go back to a 720p screen, especially after using phones like the Galaxy Note 2, where it's really obvious the difference in clarity you have from a large screen device with a 1080p display and then a large screen device with a 720p display. I have to say, though, that if I'm not mistaken, And please, someone correct me down in the comments if I'm wrong, if I maybe overlooked a phone. But this might be the smallest size screen with a 720p display. So even though we don't have quite the same resolution as the Galaxy S4 or the HTC One, the pixel pitch is still really, really small. So clarity and fine detail still look really good to the naked eye, and you've got to put this phone really close to your face to start seeing pixelation or start seeing jaggies on, text and fine detail. I really thought going back to 720p was gonna suck, but it's been kind of a non-issue. General performance on the phone has been good. Obviously, with the dual-core processor on board, it's not gonna break any performance records, but HTC Sense has leaned out from previous generations of Sense, and it seems to take less of a resource hit when you're using the phone. And for those of us who need to get through the day mostly just doing communication stuff and texting and emailing, maybe sharing some documents. I edit a couple little audio files. I have to attach them to emails. This phone has been performing wonderfully. And for those of you who might be concerned, I'm going to pick up this phone, but I really want to have a good idea if software will still support this phone while I'm getting to the end of a 2-year contract. We can turn to phones like the Motorola X just to get some sense of what Google's future strategy might be. And the Motorola X, Google's new Motorola branded premier phone experience, is rocking the same processor as the HTC One Mini. So at least from the operating system perspective, Google/Motorola have to be looking at coding for Android for at least the next year with dual-core processors in mind, which makes this mid-range phone a slightly safer proposition. And getting pretty decent battery life to boot. The dual-core Qualcomm in this, we just understand. We've been using this processor for almost 2 years now. And so battery management has actually gotten pretty good using this chipset. Unfortunately, neither of these phones are going to be all-day devices, and by that I mean true 24-hour runtime devices, not like Motorola's claiming with the Moto X. But I have found that both of these phones with moderate use, not with heavy use, not if you're really into 3D gaming or trying to watch a lot of video or streaming Netflix kind of stuff, but with moderate use, you can get these phones to dinner time reasonably well. On first impression though, it's kind of funny because the HTC One Mini isn't really that much smaller than its big brother, the HTC One. In fact, when you hold the two phones up next to each other and you kind of move them around a little bit, it'd be a little difficult to see which one's bigger than the other. But all joking aside, you can see it's just a little bit thinner and just a touch shorter than the big brother HTC One. Now that might not seem like a lot, but the HTC One is just big enough that I have trouble reaching from edge of the screen all the way over when I'm trying to use the device one-handed. And just forget about trying to hit the back button. On a phone that's this beautiful yet kind of a little on the fragile side, you've got to balance the phone to some weird claw-shaped hand position to reach that back button or home button if you're trying to use the device one-handed. You totally don't have that same issue with the HTC One Mini. The Mini actually starts to get us close to that iPhone screen size usability, which is pretty cool for an Android device which isn't quite premier, but is a very nice experience in the hand. So you can go from here to here, or from here to here, into the actual hardware of the phone. The design and the layout and the feel, the fit, the finish, all feels very much like the HTC One. However, some of the changes, especially in how the plastic banding now wraps around the edges of the aluminum on this device, in my opinion, makes it feel a little bit nicer than its big brother phone. So running your finger along some of the edges on the HTC One, especially around the headphone jack, it leaves the phone feeling just a little unfinished. It was one of my big gripes during my wrap-up video on the HTC One after spending a couple months with it. I still think it's a gorgeous phone, but I think the HTC One Mini actually improves upon some of that fit and finish, especially around the headphone jack. This plastic edging which creeps to the front and the edges and the sides of the phone, I think actually does a better job when you put it in someone's hand. It's just a cleaner presentation right up front. And just as we've seen on the HTC One, the ultra pixel camera makes an appearance on the One Mini. And that's really exciting, folks, because this phone has my favorite camera built into the back of an Android handset so far. I mean, I haven't had a chance to play with the LG G2 yet, but in terms of all of the Galaxy S4s and LG Optimus G Pros that I've played with, larger pixels providing for better low light sensitivity means that I'm more likely to get candid snapshots in indoor and low lighting situations, which is a lot of what I shoot. We'll be doing a full camera test video where I take this out and do my normal tricks, checking out street scenes, low light photography, just different video samples in different scenarios. But here's a sample of video off of the back camera, the actual ultra pixel camera on the HTC One Mini, and I think it looks pretty good. In fact, I'll be really curious to see out in the wild how this camera compares to the camera built into its big brother. And now here's a sample of the video off of the front-facing camera on the HTC One Mini. This looks pretty good too. You know, I had issues in tweaking some of the settings when I did this test on the original HTC One, so I hope I did this better now and I don't screw it up when I render this video. But, you know, in terms of being able to take Skype calls, Google Plus Hangouts, this is fantastic performance. You know, it looks great. It's very crisp. This looks like a good solution for video calling. I'm very impressed. I think this is a great little front-facing camera module. You know, it's those little touches that really raise the bar on mid-range tech. You know, this is a phone that would have crushed the Galaxy S3 if it had come out at the same time. And that's really exciting stuff to see that kind of technology filter down into less expensive handsets. I'm not going to do an unboxing. I refuse to do that to you guys. But there is one funny thing about the box on the HTC One Mini, in that for a phone that's called the Mini, the box is really big. You know, by comparison, this is the box for the LG Optimus G Pro. You know, this is a phone, this is a phablet, you know, with a 5.5-inch screen, and this is a mini phone with a 4.3-inch screen. You can see, you know, like, it's just funny. I opened up the packaging on this when AT&T sent me out the review unit, and I honestly thought they'd made a mistake. So, you know, that's just a thing that happened. The HTC One Mini comes with 16 gigabytes of onboard storage with no way to augment by SD card, so you're locked into that 16 gig. But of course, because of the way that manufacturers are producing Android handsets now, you don't get 16 gig. When you first boot this sucker up, you're somewhere around 10 gigabytes of storage. You lose that 6. And we'll talk about that in another video, right off the top. And that's really lean. 10 gigabytes these days is not a lot of room when we're talking about having huge MP3 collections, putting a couple movies on your phone, especially if you want your kids to watch, you know, some films that you've legally acquired that you can transfer to this. And that will be one factor that I'm really curious to check out on this phone, because I use my phones to take tons of pictures and I shoot a lot of video when I'm out and about. And if I'm starting to creep up to the upper limits of this phone's storage capacity, that's gonna be a bummer. I'm really excited to tear into this phone a little bit more. I usually don't get stoked about phones in the mid-range, but HTC's done a really nice job of moving the mid-range up on us. You know, just as at the beginning of the year, we had a lot of cool players taking low-end phones up a notch. Now manufacturers are getting a little more savvy about what to do in that $100 price range so that those phones aren't falling too far behind either. We're gonna be doing a benchmarking video on this phone. I've already shot an audio sample, you know, some music files, a movie file, so you can hear what the boom sound speakers sound like on this little guy. And we're also going to be doing a full camera sample so that we can see how Ultra Pixel performs in the mid-range and see if it's really any different than Ultra Pixel on the HTC One, the big brother phone. In the meantime, I'm Juan. This is the HTC One Mini. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all on the next review.